Okay, so learning how to graph, there were a few problems that you asked me about, but I'm going to do some examples first. And what I want you to keep in mind is this y equals mx plus b format. It's called the linear equation template, where the m is representing the slope of the line and the b is representing where the line touches the y-axis, what we also call the y-intercept. And so whenever we have an equation that says y equals, or we can make the equation say y equals, then these two pieces of information help us know how to graph. It's not the only way to graph. You can actually make a chart and fill that in, but I think this is a little bit easier to do and faster. So right now for this equation, the m, the slope, is 3/4, and the y-intercept, where it touches the y-axis, is at +1. And whatever number is here, you can put it as a set of coordinates at 0, 1. Because whenever you touch the y-axis, x is 0, and the y value is whatever was sitting here. So I can go over to this equation and see that it says y equals. So right here, we know x is going to be 0, and the y value is going to be -2. So you can get those two pieces of information from the equation. We got this piece, and it became our first set of coordinates that we can put on the graph. Then we can use the slope, which is the m. We can use slope to create a new set of coordinates to be our second set on the graph. And what you do is, like in this case, our slope is 3/4, and slope is set up to where the top number always is how y changed, and the bottom number is always how x changed on the graph. So if we're going to use this slope to create a new set, we're going to change the y value by 3, and we're going to change the x value by 4. So come back to the set of coordinates. This is your x, this is your y. X is 0, y is 1. And so y, we're going to give it 3. Y is going to get 3 more, +3. So that part will be a 4 there, because 1 + 3 is 4. And then we're going to give the x a 4. So 0 + 4 is 4. And right now we have the two sets we need to put on the graph. So you find the y-intercept and put a 0 with it, and then you use the slope with that set to create a new set, and you suddenly can graph it. Let's do that again over here. Our y-intercept is 0, -2. Our slope is -5, which we can put in a fraction over 1. The top part always affects the y values, the bottom part always affects the x's. So we're going to subtract 5 from the y. So -2 is the y value here. So -2 minus 5 is -7. And then this one's positive, so it's 0 + 1 is 1. So there's your two sets you can put on the graph. Over here, this one, notice it doesn't have a y. And anytime one of the letters is missing, it means that it won't cross that axis. So if y is missing, then the line will not cross the y-axis. So if the x is what was missing, then it would not cross the x-axis. So if you think about a graph, if you draw a line that's never going to cross the y-axis, it has to be a straight up and down line. That's the only way it's never going to cross the y-axis. So what we need to know is what's the x value that it's going to go through, because it'll be straight up and down. So here we're going to solve for x. That means getting x alone. So I'll subtract 1 from both sides. And then get x alone, divide by 2 on both sides. So we find out that x is 2. And what that means is that in all sets, for this problem, in all sets, x is 2. Y can be anything you want it to be. It can be 1, -10, 3. It doesn't matter what the values for y are, because what we know is that no matter what y is, x is 2. Y wasn't even in the problem. So if you went up to the graph and you said, okay, x is 2 here, so 2 and 0 goes here, and 2 and 1 goes here, and 2 and 3 goes here, and 2 and -1 goes here, and that would draw the line. This is a line that does not cross the y-axis, but it does go through the x-axis at the 2. So here we have this. We have both the x and y. That's good. Here, if we wanted to put it in that template form, y equals mx plus b, the m is the -5, or -5/1, but the b isn't showing, and you could actually write it as +0, because that would be the same thing. So what we have then, our first set of coordinates then, since it's always this number on the y value and then the 0 for the x, is that this happens to cross through 0, 0 on the axis. This 0 comes into the y position, and then we always put a 0 in for the x. So now we can change these sets by using the slope. Remember, the top number changes the y, the bottom number changes the x. So y is going to be changed by subtracting 5. 0 minus 5 is -5. And 0 plus 1 is 1. So these are your 2 points to put on the graph. Down here, this one, notice that x is missing. It will not cross the x-axis. Well, again, if you look at a graph, if you're never going to cross this x-axis, then it must be a horizontal line somewhere crossing the y-axis but never crossing the x-axis. So we need to find out, where is this line going to cross just the y-axis. So we're just like the other problem we did earlier when we had to get x alone. In this case, we're going to get y alone. So we're going to subtract 56 from both sides, and then divide by -8 on both sides, and we get y equals 7. So this equation does not cross the x-axis, but it does put a line through the 7 on the y-axis. Let's say 7's up here, and it has to be a flat line, otherwise it would cross the x-axis someday as it tilted.